Hello and welcome into my studio. My name is Wendy Anderson and I'm so excited to paint with you today. We are going to be doing this super cute little lighthouse painting. So I hope you have all your supplies ready. And again, I'm using the Liquitex Basics primary colors, and that is it, plus black and white paint. So grab your supplies, grab a few paintbrushes, and take like the next 30 minutes with me. You can do it. It's only 30 minutes long. And paint along. I don't want you to just watch. I want you to actually paint with me, because that's the whole point of what I'm doing, is to get you painting, because then we get out of our head, we relax, and we get almost like a meditation out of it. So I hope you paint along, and thanks so much for being here. Let's paint. All right, let's get started with that large 1-inch square brush. And I'm also going to use a 1/2-inch square and a small round that's maybe about a number 4 round. Make sure you have a rag and a cup of water. And I'm using the primary colors plus black and white on an 8x10 wrapped canvas. You could also use a panel canvas. And to start, let's get that big brush wet. And we'll get the canvas a little bit wet. So just take some of that water. And at the top of the canvas, I'm going to do a little bit of an X stroke. So side to side diagonal brush strokes. And then as we move towards the bottom, I'm going to do some horizontal brush strokes, and then we'll do some vertical brush strokes. So we'll have a variety of movements. Like getting a little bit of moisture on there is fun. It just gets you kind of in the sensation of brushing the canvas a little bit. You can always mix a little bit of water into your paints as we go. I'm going to start with the light blue. So I'm going to take blue and white. And I want it to be really light, so I'm using a lot of white, just a touch of that primary blue. I'm going to make my horizon line, which is going to be about 1/3 of the way from the bottom up. So just about there. So you're a little bit below center. And then again, maybe I dip the brush in pure white with the blue on it so it gets even lighter. And I'm going to brush right through the middle. I want it really light in the middle of the canvas. And then towards the top, I'm going to get a little darker, so add more blue. And just pull across the top. Maybe even a little more white at the bottom here. And then what we can do to make our blue look a little more moody is to add a little bit of red to it. So I'm going to add a little bit of red into the blue, and it's going to make it look darker. And I'm not quite going into purple. The more red I add, the more it's going to look purple. I'm just adding a little bit, like enough to make it look like a darker shade, or a more moody, cool shade of blue. And then I'm going to just dab around the edges with that. So see, I'm just dabbing the corner. Maybe I dab a little bit of it through the bottom on top of that light white, and it's going to end up making a different shade just because there's already white in the middle. And then maybe I add a little more red. I'm going to lean a little more towards purple here, which is what I'm going for. And then I can do that on the left. And I'm just dabbing it in. It just makes it kind of fun. Now, maybe I dip the tip of the brush in the white, and I can go around the edges of that moodier shade and those purple shades and just tap some pure white in. Just doing on the corner. I'm not cleaning the brush or anything, so it should just look, maybe have a little bit of color in it, just because there's already a lot of paint on the brush. So it's going to naturally kind of mix with that. That's what I'm going for. Just tapping the corner and I'm moving along the edge of that other color. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And if you've painted with me before, you may know that I like to keep my videos pretty short and simple. That way we don't have any excuses to not paint. Right, now we've got Little taps along this side, maybe, you know, just wherever you want to brighten it up a bit, tap in. But now it looks almost like clouds. We're not going for like deliberately adding clouds, but we want to get this moody look to the painting. Now I'm also going to take some of this blue on the canvas right over here on the right side, but I'm going to move horizontally. So I'm going to take, I want more blue on my brush and just a little bit of red to darken. And I'm going to go right from the center and over to the right on this 1/3 of the way up mark that we were painting on our first brush stroke. And then I'm just going to move the brush from side to side and just go down about halfway or so. Maybe add a little bit of white into that to add some streaks as you go down to get a few different shades of blue. You don't want it to look solid. You want it to have some different shades, but it doesn't have to be too complicated. And then let's go into adding some different colors over here. We're going to use the brush. I'm not going to clean it because, you know, I like doing a dirty brush. Sometimes it's fun. We're just going to mix mostly blue with a touch of yellow and a touch of red. That touch of red is going to make the green look darker. So make sure you're just doing a touch of red. If you do too much red, it's going to stop looking green. So again, I have mostly blue with a touch of yellow and a touch of red. That's going to give us a dark green. And then I'm going to go to the bottom of the canvas and we're going to do those vertical brush strokes along the bottom and up on the left just a bit. And maybe I add some of that like right along the edge of that horizontal blue patch that we just painted. So I'm going to go right here, maybe just along the top of it. And then I want to create some lighter shades by adding much more yellow and some white. So see how much brighter the green gets when I do that. And that's going to go in the middle. I'm still doing little vertical pulls. And the more white and yellow you add, the brighter it's going to get. I want it really bright through the middle right here. And then that's going to be like our color blocking for this one. So we're not going to go too crazy on adding more here until we let this dry just a little bit. So I want this to have a second to dry. If you need to kind of be in a hurry or you've got other things to do, use a blow dryer. Again, there's no excuse to not paint. It doesn't have to take forever. A lot of tutorials I see are like super long. And again, I try to keep these really short, and using things like a blow dryer will help speed up your process, and it doesn't affect the outcome at all. You're just speeding up the drying process. That way you can keep going and layering a little quicker. So what I'm going to do is blow dry this so that I can layer on top like right away. And you'll know it's dry when it doesn't look all shiny anymore. So I'm gonna say mine's pretty much done drying. And then we're gonna go ahead and layer. Let's add our lighthouse in. I'm gonna put that in the middle, maybe just slightly over to the left. So we're gonna use that medium square brush, and I'm gonna do it with purple first. So it's gonna look kind of dark at first. So let's do red and blue mixed together. Like brush your, make sure you take your brush and pull it flat so that you get a nice sharp edge on it. So I'm not like smashing the brush down to load it. I'm pulling it flat like this so that it stays nice and pulled together and you have a pretty good, this brush is actually kind of not that new, so it's a little rough around the edges, but we're going to use a light touch. And then what I'm going to do is go right into the middle here, right in the middle. So find the middle of your canvas, right where your water and your grass come together right here. And what I'm going to do is pull up from there. So I'm going to go up, and I want to go at least halfway in the sky. So I'm going to go like here. I'm just barely touching the edge of the brush, just barely. Be like a little ghost line. Doesn't have to be thick at all. Just so soft with the touch. And then you're gonna make another parallel line just a little ways over. So come over a little bit and make another parallel line. You could always change the shape a bit. You want it to be ever so slightly wider at the base of the shape, like so a little bit wider, and then a little bit narrower as you get to the top. And then once you get to the top of the two lines come together, we want to connect them. So what we're going to do is do a slight rainbow. And this just enhances like the cylinder look of it. So, and then I can pull two little lines that go slightly out and then make another parallel line that's almost slightly rainbow. And go up a little more narrow and put a little top on it. Pull that together. We put a little line on top of that, and then we'll put a little triangle shape on top of that. And then maybe a little circle on top of that. It's like little shapes. So fun. All right, so now we have the basic shape of that. We can do a few more lines like right on the top of this. So I can go right here and I can just do little tiny vertical lines that pull across. And all of these things can be like repainted or painted over if you don't like the first time you do it. So don't stress. Let's see how I can make that. We're creating this, little lighthouse. Now I can pull some of that purple on the left side of it. We want it to be like our light source is maybe coming from the left of the canvas. So we're going to make the darker side of our lighthouse on the left side. And again, I can darken it, clean up the line a bit if I need to. So fun. And then I'm going to add a ton of white to my brush and just pull that in. I'm even painting over the dark color I put to soften it because I don't really want it to be that dark. I just want it to be slightly darker than the left side because I want my shadow to be on the right side. And then maybe even clean your brush to paint the rest in so that it gets lighter. So I'm cleaning the brush, drying it off, dipping it in the pure white, and then coming in to finish filling in all the way to the left. And we can do a few layers, so don't stress if it doesn't look exactly the way you want in your first layer. And I want to keep a slight outline on the edge, so if you lose it as you paint in, like I just kind of did, just come back in with that purple and re-establish the line so that you still have a line there. It should completely disappear. And then maybe I color in some more aspect of the lighthouse. So let's do some white and a bit of red. I'm going to do red, but it might look a little pink at first. We can do some layers to make it look brighter. And I'm going to do a little bit of red right here at the top. Just maybe color in half of this little thing at the top with red. See, I can go around those little, or just paint in. We're going to repaint some of those little lines that go vertically, but you should still be able to see it a little bit. doing it so softly, and then painting that little triangle at the top. Barely using the corner. Maybe you wanna switch to that small brush for this though, if you want. It's up to you. Coloring that in, and maybe even add a little point to the top, like a little line coming out. It's kind of fun. Maybe I get a bunch of white on my brush so it's like a really light pink. I'm gonna get some light pink in there, and I can brush that through the middle of the lighthouse, maybe even pulling a little over to the right. It's just a transition shadow color. And it looks kind of awkward at first. So to soften it, just clean your brush and go back to the pure white and then pull it right over the pink, right where the pink and the lighter white begin. Just sort of soften it in, but it's going to add a fun, another highlight color or shadow color, kind of a little bit of in between. It's like a mid-tone. That it's not just purple and white, you know, have a little bit of that pink in there, which just gives it some more color. And you can even use some of that pink to add a little bit of a highlight to the left side, uh, the red part on the top. You gotta have different shades. And if it gets too intense, just come back to adding more red. You can always just dip the corner in and kind of brush in some more red. And just dip in the corner. So now another fun thing we can do, now that that's kind of simmering, we can switch to our smaller brush and we can add a little bit of a glow on the inside of the lighthouse with some white and yellow. So I'm just doing white and yellow, and I'm coming right in the top part right here. I'm just gonna add a little yellow, and we can add a little bit more white towards the middle just to give it a little bit more of a glow. There. Now I can also take that yellow and white and I can brush it into this light part of the canvas down below, little vertical brush strokes to make that grass look really, really bright and intense. So you're basically getting like a nice highlight grass color. Now, if that feels too bright, I do recommend doing at least some with that really bright color and spread it around so that you have some bright, bright colors. Doing some bright down here. It looks really cool. Nice and bright. But you could also go into the dark. So we'll play with green for a second. So I can go into that mostly blue, a little bit of yellow, and a touch of red to make it dark. You could even use a touch of black if that red isn't getting it as dark as you want. But it gets it pretty dark for me. And then notice I can go down here and I can just sweep in with the tip of that small round brush some dark shades. We're pulling it up into where the water is over here. And again, if I want it a little darker, I'm going to go with some black. Just roll your brush in the paints to keep the integrity of the tip of your brush. A lot of times it's hard, it's easy to lose the tip. I really want it dark at the bottom, so I'm really just getting that really, really dark in there. And I'm really just letting that dark green blow into that area. And notice I can like curve it a little bit. It'll give a little more movement to the scene in general. So let it happen. Let it happen. And maybe I go some mid greens, meaning add more yellow. Don't make it as light as the highlight, but not as dark as the shadow. So somewhere in between. I always say minimum three different shades. It's like that's like the bare bones minimum if you want something that looks pretty good or decent. But you're looking like I would say five is better minimum. But I know some people can make really cool stuff with that really simple three shades. So it really depends on your style and how minimal you want to be. But I do feel like you gotta have at least three, and then five is good because you have your dark and light, like your extreme shadow and your extreme highlight, whatever those two colors are. Maybe it's white and black. Those can be your most extreme shadows and highlights. And then you have three midtones. So again, if I want more, I can add more white to that and more yellow, and I can make an even lighter midtone. It's still not quite as bright as the first shade that I did, but it's still pretty light. I'm just adding. The more you add, the more fun it's gonna look. And you can do that for so long. Like seriously, go crazy. Maybe I clean the brush, and like I said, I could do pure black. And when I clean that brush, oh my gosh, and I get all the paint out and then I just twirl it in, I can get some really thin lines because that's just what happens when you don't have a ton of paint in your brush. You're able to get much thinner lines. I'm just letting this kind of go into the dark, dance over the light a little bit. You gotta let the dark and light dance with each other. That's what makes it look more interesting. But I'm not gonna go overdo it too much. You can even add some black to your purple. So if I had red and blue with a little bit of black, this could be a little bit more of a dramatic shadow on the far right of the lighthouse. I can put that in and I can use it to enhance those little lines at the top. Yeah, this little railing thing up here. You want to just kind of color this in a bit. And then you want maybe a more extreme shadow just on the right side of the top part of this little red roof and the little ball and the little line at the top. So you're almost just doing a little outline to darken everything on the right side. So we've got that. And then we're gonna just add a lot of flowers down here and we're gonna call it done. Because you can go on and on, but I like to keep things pretty simple. And again, I'm using that small round brush, I'm cleaning it and drying it, and then I can go in with some pure white and maybe just add that to the center of the lighthouse. And I can even add it to the far left to give that highlight more weight. And you can tone down that shadow on the far left. So maybe you want to see it a bit, but you really don't want to see it too strong because you want that to be as bright as possible on the left. I kind of got rid of it too much though. I tend to do that. I tend to kind of go in with that highlight and just blast all my shadows away. But then that's why I love painting because I know I can go back and add it back in. So it's going to be okay. I know I can get carried away, and that's why I love it because I do get carried away. Right, perfect. Now let's add some flowers at the bottom, and I'm gonna do some red and pink and stuff with that small brush. So just get white and red on your brush, and let's go down and add some flowers. Let's do maybe like little poppy type flowers. So we could just make like a little ball, cluster them up over on the right. Then maybe I have some like really small ones as you go higher up on the canvas. So just make smaller little dots. Maybe smaller through the middle here. Clusters. And then maybe I add some yellow to create some orange. Do some clusters of that. Maybe these are more poppies. Poppies are orange a lot, like especially in California. So I like to paint that kind of stuff. It looks fun. Have some over here. And then we can add some purple. So get as much orange as you want in there first before you go into the purple. And then your purple is just your red and blue. Not too much blue though. Don't go crazy with the blue, and a bit of white. So it's like heavy on the red for a brighter shade, especially with these particular primaries. If you have different shades though, you can maybe, your ratios can be a little different. I'm going to add some over here on the far left, just dabs of paint. I'm keeping this really abstract. And we're just adding, I love the purple. And then for more of a highlight on the purple, just add either pink or a lot more red and white to your mix, and that's going to brighten it. See how it looks a lot brighter? And then just dab a little bit of that on top of your first shade. Just do it right away. And clean your brush, and then maybe do another coat of red. Maybe I have, before I do that though, maybe I have some more yellow and white on my brush, and then add a few more of those like bright brush strokes in there with the yellow and white if you want, or you can even add little dabs of yellow and white. Make it look like little yellow flowers. So see how we can use that color to brighten areas that we want to see a little more brightness. And I can use that as a center color for little red flowers. You can really use any color you want. Do that for the little orange ones as well. Maybe I go in and make a brighter shade of orange and do a second coat of orange or more orange in here. Just some different shades of orange. So maybe that first shade is a little darker and then the second shade can be a little lighter. Sky's the limit to your painting. It's whatever you want to see. But you just have these like wildflowers. Maybe you can do some like white daisies. So if I just get the white and come in and make like little flowers like that could look cool. Just make a little ring of small brushstroke lines. That'll give you a little daisy. Just gonna do 3 right there, and then maybe I'll do some little dots over here to indicate maybe there's some daisies over here, but maybe they're just really far away. So you can do like either just paint that but smaller, or just do little dots for the indication of that color over there. Up to you. And then you can just dip in the yellow to put a little yellow dot in the middle of the daisy. And if you want to add more than one shade in the center, I usually would do yellow and then maybe orange at the bottom side of the center. And that'll just give it a little more depth. That works. And you can even do some like blue in the bottom. So maybe I'd take some blue and a white, that first color we used. And maybe you paint like some little, just like little foliage type brush strokes, like little leaves or something. So blue and white, or just some little dots. Who knows? However you want to incorporate as many different colors as you want. So up to you. I absolutely love painting because of part of just this like adding of color and putting it where you want and like really customizing it. It's so much fun. I do get carried away at times. I'm just like, oh, that was maybe too much. And then you can even take some of that into the water up here and just streak it horizontally, some of that bright blue. And just to give it a little more oomph over here. Maybe even use some white, more white, and give it some more streaks. So anything that needs a little something, maybe I add a little bit of that blue to the right side of the lighthouse to give that like more to that shadow, a little more color to that shadow. Now again, if it gets too much, clean your brush and go back to the white. So the white is going to help tone down anything you do on things like that. I'll just soften it into the shape. And again, maybe I have some like orange on there again. Maybe I have some little orange flowers going on top of the lighthouse over here. Maybe that's like happening on the back. Maybe I have some little pink ones too. Peachy colors. So play around. Let things get tucked in to the scenery. So it's okay to paint over stuff to tuck it into everything. And as much layering as we need to do until we are happy and it's like doing something, we're like done with the process. So you'll know when you've just reached a point where you're like not sure if you should add more. That's your shopping point. I'm like getting to that point where I'm like, all right, that's quite a bit of flowers. We might get carried away here and it might start to look weird. So that's when I know to stop. The last thing I would do is just double check your shadows and highlights. So shadows could be that purple color. So red and blue is a good shadow. Or you could incorporate black into your shadow. I'm just doing some of that, more of that purple along the right side of maybe just very softly whooshing it in on the right. Enhance that shadow a bit. And I can even use that purple as a shadow on the right side of the other parts here. You can even add some purple, dark purple into your grass down below. So maybe you still need some darkness down there. I don't know. You're the one that knows with your painting. And then you can go back into either some of that white and yellow or just pure white or light pink and just brush in some final really bright highlights. I'm going to do some white. I'm just going to go along the left side of the top here of this thing. Kind of carving into, maybe I'll highlight this little railing. So put a little bit of white on those little lines. This is great if you got your lines and maybe along the top too. That's a great thing to do if your lines got too thick. Highlight it. You're good. And then it will tone it down. And you can even paint around the edge of your lighthouse with some white or whatever to carve into it and clean up the edges. So if anything got kind of misshapen, use the white to kind of outline it. And it will just blend into the background with this one. And again, maybe I have some more white in the water here that's going to look like maybe like a little wave or something. Or more little white dots. Or another coat of paint on the daisies. Whatever your painting needs. I've got a little bit of white into the grass over here on the far left. And then I'm going to call it done. It's so hard for me to stop, but there we go. Now we have some like wildflowers, lighthouse, pretty sky. and you're done. So easy. And we're just a little over 30 minutes because I got carried away, but you could always cut yourself off sooner. And I just want to thank you so much for painting with me. I do this so that you have an idea. So maybe you don't know what to paint. So here you go. Here's an idea. And so that you see how fast you can move through the process and that you do have time to do it. It seems like a time-consuming thing, and it can be, of course, but it could also be very quick. And the more you do it, even just these little quick things, it's better than nothing. It's kind of like exercise. It's better to do a 10-minute workout than no workout. So same thing with painting. It's better to sit down for 30 minutes and complete a painting than it is to just never start. So I hope this was inspiring. I hope you painted along. And thank you so much for watching. And I hope to see you painting again really soon. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye.